So far we have been discussing about the marketing, the components of marketing, the consumer behavior, etc. Now, how do we know what are the problems that are there in the market, or how to collect the consumer behavior is a problem. So far we have been discussing about the product, price, promotion, place, the strategies, the consumer and industrial behavior and consumer industrial markets. But what happens if there is a problem? Or to know that there is a problem and to solve, we need to have some information, or even to analyze consumer behavior, we need information. So, how do we get that? To solve the problems also we need information. So, we have to systematically collect, analyze and apply the data to solve the problem. That is what is called as research. So, in marketing we do the marketing research for that. Now, before we go for the marketing research per se, let us understand the types of researches in marketing. The first one is called as fundamental research. This is mostly theories. To understand the concept, the research done for theories or principles or laws, it is called as fundamental research. But no research would be successful unless that is applied to solve a problem which benefits overall company, organization, countries or mankind in general. So, the applied part of this research or the fundamental research is called as the applied research. So, in marketing many of the theories we studied so far have to be applied, otherwise there is no value for what we have learned. So, that is what we do in marketing research. Now, during the applied part, there are further types of researches called as exploratory, descriptive, and causal. What is exploratory research? It is a type of marketing research to gather preliminary information that will help define problems and suggest hypothesis. It is a preliminary information. Suppose we are not clear about the problem or where the problem is, or we do not understand the theory behind, then we do the exploratory research. The second one is called as descriptive research. This is marketing research to better describe the marketing problems, situations or markets, such as the market potential for a product or the demographics and attitudes of consumers. We want to describe. Then the descriptive research is done. So, in most of the marketing research cases, we try to describe the attitudes, perceptions, personalities, the motivations, like that. So, this is what is called as the descriptive research, which describes. The next is called as experimental or causal. Causal is cause and effect. We do the experiments. That is why it is called as causal. It is a marketing research to test hypothesis about cause and effect relationship. Here we do the experiments. If we do this, what will happen? If we make this advertisement, what is the effect on the consumers? So, such kind of researchers are called as experimentation or causal researches. Now, having understood the types of researches, and when we have to study the marketing research, there could be a fundamental doubt that most of the times we use the market research and marketing research interchangeably. That is market and marketing. So, the difference is the market, as we all know, is a place where buyers and sellers meet. So, we will be discussing in market research the players, the competition, the consumers, etc., the economic situation. Whereas, in marketing, as we know that there are 4 P's, we would be doing research about the product, the price, promotion, advertising research, and also about the place, retailing. Apart from that, the consumer behavior. And market is part of marketing. So, the market research is part of marketing research. So, this distinction has to be clearly understood. Then the next question from the readers of marketing research would be, what is marketing research? The American Marketing Association defines marketing research as systematic gathering, recording and analyzing of data to solve or about the problems relating to the marketing of goods and services. So, the marketing research is systematic gathering. First you have to gather, record, analysis of the data about problems relating to the goods or services, and to solve the problems. According to Green and Thull, marketing research is the systematic and objective search Again, here also research is to be systematic. There are series of steps that are to be followed, and there is a purpose and objective. And objective search for and analysis of information relevant to the identification and solution of any problem in the field of marketing. Even this definition says that ultimately the objective of marketing research is to solve a problem. Professor Philip Kotler also defines marketing research as systematic problem analysis. First you have to analyze the problem, model building, how to solve it, and fact finding, there is a data collection for the purpose of improved decision making. So, whatever data you are collecting through systematic efforts after building the model is to improve the decision making. The data should help, or information should help in improved decision making and control in the marketing of goods and services. So, when you analyze the definitions, the features of marketing research are search for the data. It is search for data which is relevant to marketing problems. The problems in different functional areas of marketing could be consumer behavior, product, sales, distribution channels, pricing, advertising and distribution, etc. The next one of the feature is its systematic. It has to be carried out in a systematic manner rather than in a haphazard way. And in order to carry that in a systematic manner, it has to be planned with a clear objective. Hence, the problem, and there has to be an objective for entire or every research. So, here the research is not carried to establish an opinion, or it is wavered. It is to solve a problem. Hence, the objective has to be clearly understood and it has to be carried out. And it is done through intentions, and it is towards achieving the determined results. So, this is what is the objective is all about. The next feature of marketing research is it is a process. It involves various steps for gathering, recording and analysis of data. Even interpretation and presentation, it involves various steps. Now, in continuation of the objectives, the marketing research practical objectives could be for different purposes. Normally, when we do the market research as part of marketing research, it is to estimate the potential market for a new product to be introduced in the market. So, we estimate the potential market through the market research. And after launch also, maybe we have to know the reactions of the consumers towards the existing product or towards the new product. To find out the market conditions and tendencies as part of market research. If the new product is successful, we may know why it is successful. If it is a failure, also we have to know why it has failed. If we want to know how things can be done better in terms of the product price, promotion or distribution, we can do that as an objective. To know various types of consumers buying a product and their buying behaviors, their motives, their perceptions, their attitudes, and to get their suggestion for improving of the product or service. To assess the competition, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities in the market. If there is a problem in terms of marketing, to know what are the various dimensions for the problem. If we have to understand the various distribution methods, the changes that are occurring in terms of online or offline, we can find out. We may estimate the market share vis-a-vis the competitors, and that the extension could be in terms of the sales, in terms of the reaction of the consumers, suggestions of the consumers, and many times even the consumers may offer many suggestions even in terms of packaging. So, we want to know if specifically a packaging suggestions as an objective we want to carry out. So, what are the advantages of the marketing research? The advantage of marketing research is it helps the management of the firm in planning by providing accurate and up-to-date information about the demand, changing tastes, preferences, attitudes, etc. It helps the manufacturer or the marketer to adjust their strategies and productions according to the conditions of the competition. It many times helps to establish correlative relationship between the product, brand and consumer needs and preferences. Whether the product and brand are actually taking care of the needs and preferences of the consumers also can be studied, and if possible we can come out with a new product if it is not meeting. The economies in terms of the distribution, it helps the manufacturer to secure economies in distribution. It also makes the marketing of goods efficient and economical. Many times by eliminating the types of obstacles. It helps the manufacturer and dealers to find the best way of approaching the customers. Many times it is the consumers who tell about the problems in the product, and as the saying goes, the customers are problems and the customers are the the solutions. The solutions for the problems in the product are offered during marketing research to the marketers. The marketing research also helps the marketers in finding the effectiveness of the existing channels of distribution and how better they can do and how can they perform better in terms of reaching the customers also can be known through the marketing research. The marketing research also helps the marketer in planning the advertising, sales promotion efforts. And many times the visual merchandising, in-store promotions effectiveness also is understood by the marketing research. It also takes care of the sales promotion and the advertising which is used, whether it has actually helped in increasing the sales also can be known. It is also very helpful in evaluating the marketing and selling methods. Many times the marketing research lessens the risks of uncertainties and helps in taking good decisions. It helps in removing the resistance of the consumers, what causes and how it can be overcome. The marketing research also understands the nature of the demand for firm's product, and it also tells whether the demand is going to continue or it is only short term. Many times the company also can ascertain the reputation or the brand equity of the firm and its products. The marketing research helps the firm in determining the range within which its products are to be offered. If the range and assortment is to be increased in terms of sizes, color, designs, prices of the products, it can be tested. It also can help in how the consumers take decisions. What is the process? What matters them most while taking the decision? It also looks at whether the competition is copying or infringing on their patents and licensing arrangements, and also can find out the legal restrictions that are affecting the sale of the firm. Many times, particularly during sales, the study of the competitor practices can also come through the marketing research. Their practices, pricing, discounts, which will help the company to actually change its pricing strategies. It also helps during the process the management in ascertaining the price elasticity for its products, taking competition into consideration. The marketing research also helps what kind of pricing strategy they can follow. Many times even the pricing method that is to be followed can be understood through marketing research. So, the marketing research scope goes beyond the product price and can know the general marketing or environment of the market. So, many times the demand and the size of the market also can be known by asking the consumers how much they are spending and how much they are willing to spend. So, in order to offset the recession and the economies, the company can find out through marketing research. So, various time periods can be studied in terms of the market share for stabilization, and MR is extensively used while launching a new product. It will understand even during the test marketing the consumer tastes and preferences and expectations. So, in terms of the fourth P, that is place, the company can try to understand the supply chain that is existing, competitors, and what are the consumer expectations, how it can be delivered. Even the transportation and storage requirements are also can be studied. For a product that is in the declining stage, the marketing research would help it actually in reviving by suggesting or expecting from the consumers what exactly they are looking, if at all it is to be improved. So, it increases the product life cycle many times. In fashion forecasting, many companies does the forecasting by and through marketing research, and while doing so, it also asks the consumers what exactly they are looking in the new product that might come. The marketing research also helps companies in exploring new markets. So, having understood the definition of marketing, the advantages of marketing research, let us understand that it is not a great panacea and it solves all problems. It has its own limitation. It is not a solution to all marketing problems. It only gives the correct data and information. Using that, the companies have to take a decision. But how to solve the problem is dependent on many more factors. And marketing research is not an exact science. It deals with human behavior, and as such there cannot be the predictions based on the data and information which we collected. There are various other factors which are uncontrollable which influence the marketing. So, many times just going by the responses might give wrong conclusions and wrong decisions, and the application of that might not always yield the exact results. Then there is a limitation of time, because the fashion particularly works on changes and the new products are introduced regularly. There is a shortage of time to do the marketing research every time and apply, but still we have to carry with that. But the marketing research limitation, it is lengthy and it needs lot of time for collection, analysis, reporting of the data. During the period between starting the research and implementation of decisions, the situation and assumptions may change, which results in the redundancy of the data. And decisions based on such report or data prove to be obsolete and result in false conclusions. Many times, as to err is human, though the data gives you some inputs, the complicated problems may not be comprehensively studied and their impact can be properly understood because of insufficient time, data loss or funds. So, the report itself many times might suggest wrong findings, and using that to solve a problem also may be dangerous. Then the marketing research is not a foolproof tool. There are number of factors which would come in the marketing. So, identifying them and putting them in the objective and collecting all the relevant data may not be always possible. So, this leads to a very peculiar situation wherein it is difficult to study all the factors and come out with perfect solution. And moreover, the limitation should not discourage from going to the marketing research. An experienced researcher with good expertise and training would overcome, and even if it is not part of the objectives, the researcher can still find out during his research many more factors, and he automatically would try to collect the relevant information based on his experience. But whatever, many consider this as mere data collection exercise. Whatever, marketing research itself deals with data, but it should not be only limited to the collection of data. Many do not take the gist or the crucial cream out of that. So, much of the data would be wasted, and that is the reason why many equate that as only data collection method. From the cost point of view, it involves a lot of investment, because particularly in context like India, where we have huge markets, in order to collect data from this sample involves a lot of expenditure. So, not many companies can afford to do an extensive research. The next limitation, many researchers having experience with the existing tools and techniques say that there are not many tools and techniques that can accurately suggest and give the data that is required. Though there are many analytical tools, software that are useful, they are only mechanical. The data that is collected only can be analyzed. So, the validity of marketing research is limited by the limitation of tools and techniques involved. Many times the marketing research is passive. It do not deal with the active aspects of the human behavior. Its use and effectiveness would largely depend upon the decision maker and the user to get the maximum out of it. Hence, the limitations are more in terms of the usefulness of marketing research. That is what many of the researchers talk, that the usefulness of the marketing research is very limited. That is a major limitation, but that limitation should not stop a researcher from going into actual research, because as we have said, many factors would hinder the application. But overall, the usefulness of marketing research is more than the limitations. Hence, the uses are more than the limitations. Now, having understood the marketing research, the definitions, uses and limitations, let us understand how it can be done. It is done through the process. There is a process which is to be understood. So, having understood the definitions, we have to now understand the process of the marketing research, which is what exactly would give the results. So, a reader or a student must understand the process of marketing research. The first step in the process is identifying and defining a marketing problem. The first is identifying. And defining. The problem. Now, in the identification and defining, this is the first step of the marketing research problem. The marketing research problem, if it is not there, there is no requirement of the marketing research. So, the first step in marketing research procedure is to identify the marketing problem, which needs to be solved quickly. The problem may be relating to the product, the price, the market competition, sales promotion, the segments or the marketing factors or forces or pricing or relating to branding, relating to forecasting or visual merchandising and so on. So, the research process will start only when the marketing problem is identified and defined clearly. So, the researcher has to identify and define. It is not only identification, but he has to define clearly what the problem is, otherwise the researchers and for the management they will not able to understand why marketing research is required. So, they have to identify and define the marketing problem in a clear manner. Then there has to be a small preliminary explorative study. If many times the problem may not be clearly visible or may not be understood that there is a problem or where the problem is. The problem with the problem itself they may not understand. Hence, there could be a preliminary explorative study that can be done. Though many times the researcher is not clear what to study, this would help them in studying the problems and identifying where the major problem is, which requires a detailed investigation and solution. Many times the company may be incurring losses, but the company does not know where the problem is. There could be many problems, but all that are not identifiable or they cannot study all. So, they have to find the major problem. So, the external researcher or the one who is experienced has to find out the major reason or the major problem, and sometimes you may not be able to define. So, the preliminary research can also tell in accurately defining the problems, which requires detailed study. And all problems are not researchable, and the preliminary explorative study would tell that the problems that are to be studied are clearly defined. The third stage is now having understood the and identified and defining the problem. Now we have to arrive at the objectives. The researcher has to formulate hypothesis to fit the problem under investigation. The hypothesis is an assumption that understanding of the problem under study. For example, the sales are declining. The reasons could be many. with respect to the product, it could be due to poor quality, and high price, or due to limited interest taken by the dealers or distributors or the retailers, or the product itself is obsolete and not giving the benefit or fulfilling the need. So, the researcher hypothesis is, if the first reason is accepted, the same will be investigated in full. So, during investigation, if the first reason is rejected, he will move to the second for detailed study and collect the data. Now, having understood the problem and able to define the objectives, as we have seen, the data is required for further analysis or to know if there is a problem that is there already and how others have dealt with it. So, there could be literature survey done, or if the problem somebody has faced is similar to their problem, whether it can be cleared by understanding those cases. So, this is dealing with the secondary data. So, the next is determining the types of data. And its sources. The data that they are looking and sources could be the two types of data that he can depend on. So, the researcher has to look at two kinds of data, that is determining the types of data and sources. He has to look for, so at this stage the researcher has to decide the type of data required for his study purpose. The hypothesis guides the data collection process. So, the researcher can use two types of data, one is primary or a secondary. The primary data is the data that is collected for the first time. Primary data is the one which is collected for the first time for this research only. It is raw and fresh and collected for this research only. Whereas the secondary data is the data that is already existing, which is collected for some other purpose and it is there existing in the records. It may be relevant or it may not be relevant for this research objective and problem. So, the identification for the collection of primary data and secondary data, the sources are to be very clear by the researchers. Now, when it comes to the data collection of the primary, any of the methods, like since we are collecting for the first time the mail, survey, telephone, personal interview, or the mail observation, experimentation, many methods can be used for collection of the primary data. When it comes to the secondary data, the sources, if you want very authentic and it is very expensive doing extensive research, the data can be collected from the government sources, census, or from the company records, or from the research reports that are published by the researching agencies, consultancy firms. The researcher has to decide the method and source which is convenient for data collection and collect the required data accordingly. Now, having understood determining the types of data that is required, now you have to do the design as to how to collect the data. So, the next thing is creating research design. Now, doing the research design as to how you want to proceed the entire process of research. So, the research design is the plan for the conduct of actual research investigation, and this design provides guidelines for the researcher to keep a track on his actions and to know that he is moving in the right direction on data collection. So, before you design the research as to how to go about, it should answer certain questions. The first is, what is the nature of the research and purpose of the study? What type of data is required? If it is primary, what data? If it is secondary, what data? Sources. The next is actual collection, that is how to collect the required data. Having the second step, deciding what type of data is required. Now, the next step is how to collect data is to be designed, worked out. There are various techniques of data collection. So, what is the technique of data collection that the researcher is going to use? Then the type of questionnaires, that is a very big task. The questionnaire making itself is a big research. Then the administering of the technique or questionnaire. All this requires a lot of money. Hence, how much funds are required? Depending upon that, the method and methodology would change. So, the researcher also has to look at the time or time period that is required for completion. Now, when we are looking at the data collection and research approaches, it can be in many types. Whether to go for observation kind of a technique that the researcher want to use. If so, what is the tool? Is it the human or mechanical tools are required? Again, that costs. How many people will be there who are going to observe? And if it is mechanical, what is the cost? How many machines are to be bought? All that is to be designed in the research design. If somebody wants to go for survey kind of an approach, the questionnaire and the survey method, sampling, size of sampling, how many researchers are required, data analysis, all that also has to be planned. Next approach is experimentation. As we have seen the causal cause and effect, how to do the experiment. If it is impact of advertising, we have to build laboratories, or for most of the experimentation we may do it in-house and in a laboratory kind of setup. So, how that has to be done. Then you want to observe the respondents in their natural settings by the trained researchers. So, that is called ethnographic approach, wherein the trained expert will be with the respondent in their natural setting and they will be studying there. And if it is groups, the focus groups, and the study has to be understood. Sometimes the behavioral study may have to be undertaken. So, these are various approaches that in the research design one has to understand. And as we know, many times it would be survey based. The majority of the marketing research would be through this survey. If it is a survey and through questionnaire, what is the contact method? The method could be through telephone or mail. The mail can be physical letters or today through internet emails. Many surveys today are done online. There are some contact methods like personal interview, directly talking to the customer face to face and administering the questionnaire, or online interviews. The merits and demerits of all these contact methods is to be clearly understood and how much investment is required. Say for example, the personal interview. The personal interview, when you are doing, has to be through personal. That is, you will be physically present with the respondent, and any problems that are occurring has to be solved then and there. So, the physical contact method is very expensive, but at the same time it is very useful because any questions that are faced by the respondent can be solved then and there. And there will not be any gaps in the questionnaire, because the person will ensure that all the responses are given and filled in. But at the same time, people say, because of the interviewer, the respondent might want to sweet with him and would give responses as per his choice. So, there could be some bias in order to please the interviewer, but otherwise this is the most authentic way of contacting. When it comes to telephone, though that is also equally effective and personal, the respondent, since he is not in physical contact, he may give any vague answers which may or may not be correct, and authenticity cannot be verified. Moreover, if the respondent suddenly cuts the telephone, the questionnaire would become incomplete, and the continuation in the next call may not be the continuation of what he has said earlier. Though this is also the next effective method, still, since he is not in direct touch, the authenticity is the problem here. When it comes to mail, in olden days, if you send a questionnaire, the respondent may fill in leisure, but at the same time, again here also the authenticity and also whether he fills all the columns, whether he supplies all the data that is required, and sometimes he may not post it back. So, you may not get any response at all, and if he has any doubts, those things cannot be clarified. The email is the cheapest and the best possible contact method. But again, as we were discussing, the respondent may give any question, may give any answer which cannot be verified, and he may send back at his leisure, and any doubts he has, normally he may not revert back. So, we have to decide whether we want the most authentic information or at the cheapest and the best way of contact. So, the researcher has to clearly design and understand. Having understood the contact method, next he has to look at the sampling plan. Since the researcher, based on his objective and the problem, has identified the data, he would have also identified from whom to collect the data. But the researcher might have problems. Many times for a marketer, the consumers would be running into thousands, lakhs, or sometimes crores, and they may be geographically dispersed. So, contacting crores and lakhs of people for collecting the data would be humanly impossible, but sometimes it is possible. So, whomever he is trying to look at is called as the population, and ideally getting information from everybody would give the most authentic and dependable data. But since it is not humanly possible, from the population they will identify representative units, that is called as the samples. The representative units from the population are called as sample. And after identifying the sample, the researcher has to understand within the sample how many people he want to contact and collect data from. It is called as sample size.